Alright everyone, I'm in comfy mode because we had our first frost and I just want to bundle up. I don't care that I'm inside. And also it was a little chilly this morning anyway. The windows in this house are kind of old. They need to be replaced. They get a little drafty. We got to talk about weed twice, actually, today. First, in the context of Canada, they are preparing in, I believe, 3 days to legalize marijuana fully. That means people will be able to, I guess, get licenses and grow. People will be able to use it. It'll be legal to possess. The Canadian government immediately warning. I thought this was funny, by the way. Please do not try to take marijuana across the border into the United States. It's like, at least on our end, nobody would care. Like if it's in Vermont or Washington State, nobody cares. But it is still technically trafficking. What you're seeing, though, this is funny, is that almost immediately companies like Marlboro are like, oh, maybe we'll buy up a greenhouse up there. Yeah, maybe we'll get in on this. It'll be very, very funny if Marlboro or some of these tobacco companies, as tobacco use declines. Now, it's like they cause cancer in their smokers, but then they'll gladly sell you the marijuana cigarettes that you'll be smoking to try to keep a meal down when you're on chemo for your lung cancer. It's like really weird. I'm not sure I like the idea of allowing corporations to do such a thing. Apply antitrust laws or something. Apply an anti-monopoly law to keep the tobacco companies out of weed. I think the last thing that people, are going to be particularly wanting to consume, though, will be like, big tobacco weed. It's like, oh, Philip Morris marijuana plants. I think that'd be a funny one. But Canada legalizing, this is basically the year of the death knell of the war on pot. Now, I'll try to explain why in brief. Canada legalizing. That means the whole northern border of the U.S., at least as far as the U.S. goes, because it's semi-porous. It's going to be a nightmare for them to try to prevent it from coming in anyway. It's already spreading around from states where it's legal, like here in Vermont. It's illegal to do so. You're not supposed to ship it over to other states, but it happens. New Hampshire decriminalized, so if it's a small amount, they probably don't care. It's becoming an enforcement nightmare at the federal level, and more states, 4 states have it on ballot initiatives as well. 3 for legalization, 1 for decriminalization, I think. That's basically the turning point. What would happen is that the majority of the U.S. public would live in states where it's legal or at least decriminalized to use and maybe in some cases grow pot. How are you going to enforce it, especially when your northern neighbors got that and then your southern neighbors full of cartels that grow it anyway? But those cartels are going to start suffering. So all you Canadians will soon be able to toke up. Right now it's medically legal, like, sort of dispensaries and stuff. It should be recreationally legal, though. And I say this as someone who doesn't use marijuana, haven't in a lot of years. It's basically a harmless substance. YouTube, by the way, is Silicon Valley going to restore the channels of all the deplatformed people that are involved in cannabis production? Like on YouTube, YouTube kicked off literally dozens of the big pot channels, and it's like, as far as I know, a lot of these people live in places where it's legal. Why then is Silicon Valley saying, well, you're not allowed to have it on here? You're teaching people potentially illegal stuff. Ooh, it's very, very spooky and harmful and scary. Herein lies the moralism, and this is why the left eventually will actually stand against Silicon Valley. We saw in the Facebook purge, there were a bunch of groups there that were associated with sort of like the Legalize It pages, Cop Block and stuff sort of on the enforcement end. It's actually very funny. More than half the channels, they weren't some right-wing political outlet. It really pissed off a lot of people. Collectively, millions and millions of fans on these collective pages. And that was part of the purge. Is Facebook going to restore the marijuana pages? Is YouTube going to restore the marijuana channels on Twitter? If someone posted their stash a year ago, are you going to forgive them and let them come back on Twitter? It's gotten to the point. What we need to do is stop having any online enforcement of rules that aren't related to U.S. law. That's what I honestly believe, at least as far as U.S. citizens are concerned, because most of these were. But with Canada legalizing it, having that vast northern neighbor full of pot greenhouses, how exactly is customs enforcement supposed to prevent the spread of marijuana across the border and within state borders, plus running north from Mexico? It's never going to happen. So this is the year of the death knell of the war on marijuana. We should be releasing everyone, including those that were traffickers. Yes, including those that were actually growing or trafficking weed. No, I want to let them out too. They're nonviolent offenders. Someone gets 10 years in prison because they had a greenhouse full of pot plants 10 years ago. Just fucking let them out of prison. It doesn't make any sense. That was back when the moral panic about drugs was still in full flux. Now it's collapsing. Literally only in the course of 2 electoral cycles. Prefaced on last time around, I think it was, 6 different states, and then 1 defeated it. and then this time it'll be 4, and then you've got Canada joining in literally 3 days from now, and they're basically prepped and ready to go. And meanwhile, people are already growing it here in Vermont. It's like, who fucking cares? It's, literally, I hate to use the cliche, but it's just a plant, and it's a medicine. And I realize it's already medically legal basically everywhere. How can you say something is medicinal, but the general public should not use it because it's dangerous, evil, horrible, and wrong? Meanwhile, you're looking at medicine like opiates that are more legal than marijuana still in some places. They flow around like fucking candy because, doctors used to give them out like candy because they were getting money from the farm industry to do so. Give everyone their wonderful Vicodin and Percocet and all the Oxys and stuff. You're just sitting there, you're telling me that that's not a bigger problem than marijuana? Marijuana is not a problem at all. And yet you can still get banned on websites for advocating marijuana too much. Like if you actually show your pot plants or something. Or your little green bag. Oh my God, you can't have a YouTube channel, you can't have a Facebook page. Oh my God, it's moral panic, it's bullshit. And it's the death knell of it. Thankfully, Canada finally getting enlightened. It's like, yeah, it only took a decade of nonstop lobbying. It's very funny because Canada gets called hyper progressive, really far left and stuff. They're so far ahead of us, us evil barbarian bumpkin Americans would say, liberals here. And yet Washington State, Oregon, Alaska of all places, which is really far red, and like a dozen other places have decriminalized or legalized it first. Fucking Montana had medical marijuana there, I think before Canada did. They were one of the first, because I think they were like, well, we got this vast-ass state, we're never going to be able to enforce it all. Yeah, let the sick people get their pot, behind the bar, basically, the doctors going in and buying a little bag to give out to the patients, because I didn't think they had dispensaries at first. Obama kept raiding them. For the first couple of years of his first term, Obama oversaw an enormous number of raids on dispensaries and cannabis growing operations, and it was very funny because he was considered the pot president because he admitted to smoking years ago. It's like, he did more than pot, but he still wants to put people into the prison complex. You grew a pot plant, oh my God, it's still federally illegal here. In Canada, it's not going to be here. The Trump administration is signaling again, post-midterms, for pragmatic purposes, of course, that they're going to try to reform our marijuana laws here, too, at the federal level. I think you're going to see federal decriminalization, at least for small-time possession, small-time movement of marijuana. It's like, what's the fucking point? Who cares if you take marijuana from one state where it's legal to another state where it's legal, unless you're exceeding some limit under their state laws, and the states actually kind of have a right to regulate these things. I don't even think they should. Next video about it. I'll analyze some of the different proposals that have been made throughout time, because there are basically 4 different tiers of marijuana legalization. Legal and legal are 2 different things. There's a big difference between the state is saying it doesn't care what you do, and the state is saying that you can smoke weed, it's legal, but you have to do it on your own property, buy a license, you can't grow it, you can't transfer it, it has to be, regulated all the way down, basically like a New York-style pot approach, I suppose. That's about all. Peace out.